But in the meantime, we really want to talk with Linda McMahon. Linda has worked with her husband, Vince, to take a small regional business and make it into the large multinational company that WWE is today. Then in 2017, she left WWE to head the Small Business Administration for President Trump. Earlier this year, she moved over to be chairman of the America First Action. It's a super PAC supporting the president. We welcome her now from Washington. So, Linda, thank you so much for spending time with us today. It's good to see you.
Thank you, David. A lot going on.
Let's talk. There is a lot going on everywhere. But in the meantime, I want to talk about your new job. You are a very successful business person in your own right. You also have dealt with successful business, Small Business Administration. We now are hearing some people in the business community beginning to be concerned about where the economy is headed, particularly because of trade. As you enter into your new responsibilities for the Super PAC and you talk to business leaders, are they concerned about giving money to your PAC specifically because of where the economy is headed?
You know, we have not heard, I have not heard anyone be hesitant about donating to the PAC. You know, I've learned a lot about super PACs. I came on just in April of this year, so I really wasn't, you know, in the PAC mode, if you will. So there's been a bit of a learning curve for me, but we clearly look to see that donors most often start to donate after, you know, the first of the year of the election year. But though, you know, we're being successful with raising money. But donors really want to look at how do we plan to use this money to help reelect the president? And our focus is only on the presidential race. It's not any state or local races, strictly for the president. So donors are supportive of the president. They want to know how the money will be spent. They want to know what our plan is. And that's what we're spending time now talking to donors to explain what we will do with the money to help reelect the president.
So, Linda, President Trump came to office really committing to growth, and specifically things like tax cuts, which got done, deregulation, which is in the process of. At the same time, we do have this trade dispute. As you talk to business leaders around the country, small business leaders as well as large ones, to what extent are they concerned that the president might be taking back with one hand what he gave with the other?
Well, I think the president campaigned very strongly that he was going to take this trade war to China. It was not a surprise. And when he was elected, he wanted to build the economy to get it strong. And we have, you know, an economy that's the envy of the world now. And small businesses are still optimistic. You know, the recent statistics and studies are showing that small business owners are still optimistic about where this economy is going. Our consumers are still spending. Big businesses also are looking still positively, though there is, you know, there's a little bit of weakness, but we're still seeing an incredibly strong economy. And if you're going to take on a trade dispute with an economic giant like China, that's been, as the president said, you know, picking our pockets, you know, for the last decades, it is only, you can do it only with such a strong. So you're seeing farmers that have taken a little bit of a hit, but are saying, look, we still back the president. Now, there's a point at which farmers are going to say, okay, you know, that's enough pain for me, but there's going to be a little pain for a long-term gain, and that's the game plan.
As you say, Linda, the consumer has really supported this economy and is, after all, about 70% of the U.S. economy. At the same time, we now have some members of the Federal Reserve expressing some concern we may be putting too much pressure, actually, on these consumers. As you know, capital investment has actually trailed off after coming up dramatically after the tax reform came through. It now has trailed off again. Are you concerned that, in fact, what is going on with that, the business sector in terms of capital investment things could trickle through to the consumers?
Well, I can tell you know what's interesting, David, about consumers who are still spending? What we're seeing is also how much consumers are saving. So they're putting away money. They have more money in their pockets. They're buying more goods and services. And I think it's a strong indicator that they also are saving money about this confidence still in the market. So I'm not seeing that swing just yet.
It's interesting. You get an advantage to some extent in raising money for the president because I don't know how many there are right now. There are less than there were, but there are a lot of candidates on the Democratic side, and they're focusing on one another. How much of an advantage does that give you in this interim period before, in fact, it starts winnowing down substantially?
Well, the more the Democrats are really, you know, arguing among themselves, that gives us, you know, a little leeway time. The president just keeps doing what he's doing, which is running the country and being, you know, the leader of the free world. And I think he's continuing to focus on making sure that our economy does stay strong. But he's locked in on this trade dispute with China because he knows it's the right thing in the long term for our country. But, you know, it also makes it a little bit more difficult to target what you're doing when there are so many people on the other side. It'll be much easier into, you know, the balance of the election year when the field has winnowed. In fact, actually when the Democrats select their candidate so that it's one-on-one, because then you'll really start to look at whose policy is going to rise above the fray and where the voters in their minds are ready to vote to reelect the president, which I strongly believe will be done, or to elect a Democratic opponent, which I can't imagine would happen because our economy is so strong, and all of the programs that I hear espoused on the Democratic side, I think, will ruin our economy.
So, Linda, as you know so well, the markets pay a lot of attention to what's going on in Washington these days because it really can affect asset prices. One person who follows this closely, David Wu, who's for Bank of America Merrill Lynch, actually said recently to Bloomberg that he thinks that, in fact, President Trump, as he gets closer to the election in 2020, may well back off on the China issue, or at least come to some sort of a resolution, because it may actually pose some danger for his re-election. Do you see that happening? Is he committed, no matter what happens with the American people and what it looks like in the poll, to see this thing through?
Well, I think that's what he said last night, as a matter of fact, or yesterday, that, you know, he really, in terms of looking, I think his comments really more directed more at Wall Street, that he said he had to look beyond Wall Street for the good of the country. And I think that that's what he is doing.
So, Linda, to sum up here, as you look at business, whether it's WWE or whether it's the small businesses that you dealt with through all these years, what is the main hope for the business right now? Where do you see growth coming? We have maybe 2% growth in the country right now in the second half, but where do you see increased growth? Because that was the president's principal agenda point, at least one of them, when he got elected.
Well, with the tax cuts that came in, and, you know, when I was at Small Business Administration, I went all over the country. I went to all 50 states. I toured business owners. I talked to them about their hope that tax cuts were going to pass and that regulations would be rolled back. They told me what they would do. They would invest in people and plants and equipment, and they did it, and they're continuing to do it because their optimism for growth is still so high. All the indicators that we are looking at with small businesses still today are that small businesses are very, very bullish on this economy and still willing to invest and to grow.
Okay, Linda, really appreciate you spending time with us today. That is Lynn McMahon. She is chair of America First Action, coming to us from Washington.